So I asked the museum director, so what's the deal with the Red Bull and Porsche story? And he told me, look, Rodrigo, we have lunch at the same place as the research and development folks. We hear some conversations, and what we know is that after the deal fell through, we never saw a can of Red Bull for sale in the refrigerators again, anywhere in the factory here in Stuttgart. Hey, and you're in Little Big Stories. Every week here at Splash and Go, you already know a little story about Formula One or not, as long as it's quick, fun to tell and interesting to know. Let's go! "2023 was one of the most nerve-wracking years in this channel's history, and also the year we did things I never imagined, not even in my wildest dreams, that I would do for work. At the beginning of the year, with all the discussions about betting regulations, one of our first sponsors here pulled out. On a Friday, we verbally agreed to renew the contract for another year, and on Monday, when I thought I was going to get the contract draft to sign, they told me, we won't be able to continue anymore. And I thought, now we're screwed. At that point, the National Congress was discussing the regulation of betting, and that was our first regular sponsor. And you might be wondering, why is he talking about this part? I'm talking about this part because I had a wedding planned, an international trip to take, and I was planning to extend the trip to create content for the channel. Go to Stuttgart to the Porsche and Mercedes museums, go to Maranello to visit Ferrari, and to Imola for Minardi Day. Today, looking back, but he did it. Yeah, but in 2023 I didn't know if I would actually do it. After all, I was bringing forward or planning to bring forward some big expenses and had just lost a sponsor. Fortunately, in the end, everything worked out. The trips happened, and the content was produced. Some of you have already watched, and if you haven't, it's worth checking out the visit to the Porsche Museum, the visit to the Mercedes Museum, the visit to the Ferrari Museum, and a day, actually, 2 full days at Minardi Day, filming historic Formula One cars, and there was also a track walk at Imola. So, once this ends, you already know, there are probably about 2.5 hours of video for you to check out. My wife and I then went our separate ways. She went back to Brazil and I continued my trip. From Madrid, she went to Sao Paulo and I went to Stuttgart. There's no direct flight, so I had to go through Barcelona, spend an entire night waiting for my flight, which was on a Monday morning, to get there after lunch. Sunday night, each of us heading to our own destination. I went to Barcelona airport, got there around 10 at night, and waited until 8 in the morning. At 8 in the morning, off to Stuttgart, and I arrived there around 10:30. I got to my hotel at noon. So, I'd pulled an all-nighter and was expected at the Porsche Museum at 2 in the afternoon. That day, Monday, the museum wasn't supposed to open, but they opened it just for us. Check out the video so you can see for yourself. It was just me, the museum, and one other cleaning staff member. Inside, after an all-nighter and feeling really tired, I created all the content that would become a video here on the channel, as I've mentioned before, and in the end, I was welcomed at the little shop by one of the museum directors. We started chatting and he said, "Do you want to see the workshop where the collection's cars are kept?" I actually talk about this part in the last story of my book, and if you haven't read it yet, I'll leave the link in the description. I'm also putting the QR code up on the screen so you can get your copy. And in that chapter, I tell the story. I got to see right before my eyes a 917 short tail with Gulf livery, stripped down, open, being worked on. I wasn't allowed to film that part, and as we walked around that and other dream cars I'd only ever seen as models or in photos, we started chatting, cameras off, and the conversation just flowed. And I asked him, "Hey, what's the deal with that Porsche and Red Bull story that fell through?" Let me pause here to give some context. 𝙘𝙤𝙘𝙤𝙘𝙘, one of Red Bull's founders, knowing he was suffering from a terminal illness, worked out an alliance with Porsche so that the Formula One team, under his beverage brand, could survive by partnering with a major manufacturer, Porsche. The alliance was put together, documents were presented, but at the last minute Christian Horner hit the brakes and didn't let the partnership go through, with 𝙘𝙘𝙘𝙘 already living out his final days. When the deal fell apart, Porsche, in a rather terse manner, simply said it wouldn't be getting involved with Formula One at that time, but that it was still looking at opportunities. So, coming to Formula One, or rather, only set to come in 2026, at least for now, is Audi, which is also under the Volkswagen Group umbrella. So, everyone has always wanted to know, and still wants to know, the ins and outs of this story. So I asked the museum director, So, what happened? Did you guys hear anything about it? And he started to explain, here, there are several departments, several buildings at the factory, and there's a cafeteria where we sometimes have lunch when we get tired of the museum restaurant. The R&D folks, research and development, also eat there. They're the ones responsible, and still are today, for the high-performance engines. Kind of like at Mercedes, where their high-performance competition engine factory isn't in Germany, but in England, HPP, which is in Brixworth. The research and development folks used to have lunch near the museum guys, and they would overhear some conversations, throw out a few questions, and the R&D people would answer in a pretty generic way. And then he told me, Rodrigo, they never told us anything specific, but nowadays it's known that there was already a prototype engine running on a dynamometer at the Red Bull factory in England, made by Porsche, before any major deal was even signed. Just so you can see how far this story went. And then he said, the only concrete sign that something went wrong and that things changed overnight, in our reality here, was that from the day Porsche announced they would no longer have an alliance with Red Bull onwards, we never again saw a single can of Red Bull in any of the factory's refrigerators, in any of the buildings in the complex. I heard that, ended up forgetting about the story, but it's something really curious that I wanted to share with you, which I remembered the other day in the shower. Two extremely important companies, Porsche and Red Bull, had an alliance that was already being tied up, but it had to be undone, and the practical, day-to-day effect for the employees was the disappearance of Red Bull cans from the refrigerators that everyone had access to. I remember that at the time I found it really curious, but my mind, in the middle of all the things I was doing, just shoved it into a drawer. And as soon as I remembered, I said, next batch of little big stories, I'm going to record and tell this one. The Red Bull cans disappeared from the Porsche factory, like in a traumatic breakup where all the couple's photos on Instagram and other social networks vanish. Someone always asks, is everything okay? It wasn't. Porsche and Red Bull went their separate ways. So that was another little big story from Splash and Go on YouTube. In this case, one that I experienced firsthand and came here to tell you about. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a like, it's free, doesn't cost anything, you know, and it really helps the channel. Do me this favor, do us this favor, and leave a comment here if a little big story comes up. Tell us if you liked this one. Send a shout out to your spouse, your partner, your cat, your dog, your parakeet. Let us know where you're watching from, any comment counts, and it helps the algorithm keep spreading our content across the internet. So you don't miss anything we do here. We have notification channels, Instagram, Telegram, and WhatsApp, where you can join and start getting automatic messages as soon as we publish any of our content. Plus breaking news, race times on Formula 1 weekends, and so on. And last but not least, here are the handles for our social media, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and TikTok, where there's content all the time. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, and a big hug to you all.